Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I am joined by a couple here that have just written a book, and I'm really excited to dive into it because I think it might help some of you out there that might be dealing not only with being married, but also raising kids that may have disabilities. And that's kind of the basis of their book. So I'm really excited to have them on. But Todd and Kristin Evans have joined me. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you so much, Bryan, for having us.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so let's dive in. Let's hear a little bit about your guys' family, and then we'll dive into the book a little bit.
All right. Well, Kristen and I, we've been married 24 years now.
Nope.
Nope, I got it wrong again. Dang
Yes.
it.
23.
That's a great start. So we've been married long enough to forget sometimes how, at least I sometimes don't remember. So, but we've got two kids. Oldest is 18, youngest is 14, and we live in Nashville, Tennessee. Our youngest has pervasive developmental disabilities, a lot that we deal with her and her needs, muscular and mental both. But she's an absolute joy to live with in life. But it's made us kind of have to relook at our marriage and how to make it survive and thrive. And that's really what the core of our book that you mentioned is about is just the lessons we've learned along the way and adding in just research and things to that because we've had a tough time in our marriage trying to kind of figure it out and how men and women communicate in general, but then amplified by the situation of our family as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I think, yeah, I guess for you guys, yeah, that can be challenging. You guys are originally, as we were talking about before we started recording, you guys are originally from Nashville in that area?
We both actually grew up here and didn't meet until college at the University of Tennessee, moved to the Chicago and northern Wisconsin area to go to grad school together, and back to Tennessee. Finally made our way back to Nashville about 11 years ago. Yeah, and we're
All
so
right.
happy to be back.
All right, cool. Well, I absolutely love Nashville. As I was saying to you guys, my wife and I visited Nashville over the summer and just had an absolute blast. We had to hit all the popular bars out there. I don't drink. She doesn't drink. She did have a couple of cocktails, but I don't drink. And even not drinking, you can go and have fun there. So just people watching.
Yep,
Anyways,
Yep.
yeah.
uh, so let's dive
No
in.
place like a
Go ahead.
yeah. Hey, no, it's nothing like a hay wagon down the main
Oh,
street of town
goodness.
that you
Right.
can jump on
Yeah,
in
there's
Nashville.
parts we're not super proud of.
Yeah,
But
there was, what I loved about it, now we're on the topic of Broadway in Nashville. What I loved about it is a lot of a lot of the bars that are along the strip there, they have open windows, like these big
Mhm.
shutter windows that open up to the street. So as you're walking by, you're like standing right there where the band is playing
Mhm.
music, and the music is just blaring throughout
mhm,
the whole strip there.
Mhm.
It was just a lot of fun. We had a blast.
yeah.
I definitely go back. I'm sure you guys living there, you're over it. But yeah. Well, cool. Let's dive in. Let's dive into the book because I have the book here. Thank you guys very much for sending me the book. How to Build a Thriving Marriage as You Care for Children with Disabilities. This is the book here. And let's just get right to it. I mean, what was the main inspiration behind writing this book? I know for me, like my inspiration behind the podcast, parenting podcast, was that, I gone through these years of just raising two boys, my wife and I, and they got to the point where they were adults, and I felt like my journey as a dad was ending. And so I wanted to try to give back or help other parents. And that was kind of the inspiration behind starting my podcast. So how about you guys? What was the inspiration behind writing the book? Because there's two facets there, right? You're dealing with not only your marriage, but also raising kids, one with a disability.
Yeah, so like Todd said, we really struggled, especially when our daughter Bethany Grace was young, coming home from the NICU after 3 months, and the stress was chronic and it was intense. And so we see it as we were in a pressure cooker.
Mm.
And so, all those, if we already had issues in our marriage or personalities or family dynamics, those were just amplified. And all those stressors just boiled up to where we weren't functioning. We weren't functioning in our marriage. I wasn't functioning in my mental health, which obviously impacts parenting
Hmm.
and the health of our children. And we sought help. We went to marriage counseling twice. And back then, she's almost 15. So it was about 13, 14 years ago. There, especially in our area, it was more of a rural area. There weren't therapists trained in the additional issues for families who have children with special needs. There wasn't a lot of training out there. There wasn't really a book that really addressed the extra issues. And we just realized back then we believed the statistic that kind of circulates that 80% of these marriages end in divorce,
Mm.
which through researching for the book, I'm a research nerd, I can say that. Um, that's just not true. And, but back then we were hopeless. We were like, well, what's the point? We have a 20% chance. And but then we just decided we were gonna, Todd was like, I'm not leaving you. I'm committed. We're gonna give our marriage one more chance. And we basically stumbled through, like you would in the wilderness, trying to learn those extra skills to survive. And not only survive, but thrive as a couple and a family. And when we finally got to the point about 5 years ago that things were stable, um, and we were able to really start to look at, can we go back into ministry together? What if we helped other couples not have to suffer like we did?
Mm.
We learn these skills through somewhat trial and error, somewhat just, we're both pretty tenacious, determined people. And through me going to therapy, researching, and actually researching for the book, we learned a lot about what was going on in our marriage that we didn't even realize up until 3 years or 4 years ago. And so we just want to give couples a practical guide. Hey, these are the additional skills. It makes sense that you're struggling. And here's the skills you've got to learn in order to thrive. And just, we're so excited that Baker Books was excited about the book. And we just love getting it in the hands of couples to help them build those skills and not have to struggle like we did.
Yeah, I think for anybody that's dealing with whether it's a child with some form of disability or even just the normal stresses of
Hmm.
marriage, you always have to find a way to work through those challenges. I mean, when you get married, that's you're committed as one. Uh,
Hmm.
in sickness and health, right? It's like you are committed to each other, and you have to figure out a way. For my wife and I, yeah, we went through many challenges as our boys were growing up. We there were times when we weren't good at communicating, but one of the things that we implemented in our marriage, we did this, gosh, probably a few years before, even before the pandemic. So we've been going for quite a while. We have a marriage coach that we go to,
Hmm.
and she's a licensed, marriage therapist. But we've been seeing her, and we see her typically every other month, maybe every couple months. And we don't do it because we have problems. My wife and I don't have any problems. We do it so we don't have problems. We do it to
Hmm.
make sure that we're staying on the right track. And it's amazing
Hmm.
to me, even with the stuff that we go through and how we work through our communication and practice the skills that we learn in our sessions. Uh, it's amazing to me every single time we go back. Like I look forward to going, and every single time we go back, we continue to learn.
Hmm.
So those kind of things I think in a marriage are important. And some people don't like the word therapy. Some people think that
Hmm.
it's not the road to go down. Like it's bad news. I'm completely opposite. Like I'm
Hmm.
100% in support of it. But for you guys, when you guys first started going, to counseling to help you guys in your marriage, did you find that communication was the biggest problem, or was it the stresses of you having to not only figure out a way to live together as a couple, but having to deal with the pressure of raising a child that struggled?
Yeah, I'd say anybody that's been married more than a week comes to realize that you're different personalities, and that was true for Kristen and I for sure.
Hmm.
Just very, very different personalities, definitely different communication styles and ways of seeing life and issues and ways of how do we deal with these situations that we find ourselves in now. So it was very different approaches for both of us, and that just led to lots of conflict, to say the least. Um,
Well, I'd say everything was more intense.
mhm.
Mm,
Um, all parents are stressed. There's a high percentage of parents in the US that say they're overwhelmed every day. And definitely want to acknowledge that and validate that. And then you have a child that has extra financial
mm,
needs, either medical or um, developmental, which takes more time too, which impacts employment. It just starts to snowball.
mhm,
And then one of the biggest things we learned about communication through the book, through researching, was the chronic grief that we experience. And that was the biggest wedge that we had difficulty with, because women typically experience chronic sorrow in stronger, more intense waves. Men kind of statistically, not, I don't want to overgeneralize, more than more often stay in denial.
mm,
And then when they do start to process, they kind of move through it quicker. They might have some waves here and there that hit them, but it's very different. And so that was a big wedge. Todd just couldn't understand why I just couldn't get over it, because he had grieved, moved on with that acute grief. And so finally, that was one of the biggest things we started to. But I'd say it was all of the above. It was all we could do to get to marriage counseling. And the therapist didn't quite understand that, and he just handed us a book to read. It's a really good marriage book, and it's actually cited in our book quite a bit, but it didn't address all the issues, the extra issues that we were facing, and we had to learn some skills.
mm,
Just the added aspect too of our daughter was medically fragile at the
Hmm.
time on like 8 different machines to keep her alive. So the consequences of some of our decisions literally could be life changing for her
mm,
and her survival.
mm.
So there's all that pressure on top of it um, to make things best decisions you can on very little sleep and all those other things that are going on in the
And
Yeah.
marriage.
self-care and marriage kind of
Lowest on the list.
easily get
Mhm.
Yeah.
trapped at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, you guys do talk about self-care in the book, and what we're going to get to that. I did want to ask you a question though when it comes to your
Mhm.
daughter. Um, let's go back to when, she was born. What were the struggles? What did the doctor say was going on? And the reason I ask, I'm curious because my son, actually both my boys, but my oldest was born 6.5 weeks premature, and he had one collapsed lung, and
Mm,
he had to go into the NICU as well. And he was
Mhm.
in there for about 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks. And they had him on an oscillator to get him to make sure he stayed breathing until he was strong enough to be taken off the oscillator and on his own, be on his own. And that was for my wife and I. I had a career. My wife
mhm,
was going to be a stay-at-home mom, so wasn't working. So she spent her day and evening
mhm,
at the hospital with Blake. And then I would come up after work. Typically, I left work early. I would come up after work and we'd stay there and we'd be there all night. And that was our life every single day.
mhm.
Every single day. That was our life. And it was a challenge. It was hard. It was And I think it was hard because there was a sense of worry on our
Mhm.
minds about what the future held for not only us, but our son. What was our future going to look like?
Hmm.
And that's added pressure in itself, right? I mean, you're talking about here you are dealing with a situation right now, but this isn't a situation that's going to be over. This is going to carry on. For my son, we were told that he's going to have difficulty learning. He's going to have some challenges there. He may have some difficulty with, growth, things like that. They told us different things that could happen to him as he got older. And I'm going to tell you guys something crazy. He is 6'4". He had like he's the smartest kid I've ever met. Like I would say he's probably smarter than me. The kid's a brainiac. Loves to read, but he's a workout fanatic. He takes care of his body. Like he works for Charles Schwab right now, and he lives on his own in Arizona. I mean, the kid just thrived. There was no issues with him at
Hmm.
all. But for you guys, I mean, that's a different. You're completely down a different road. So can we go back? Can we talk about that with how the doctor, told you what was going on and what exactly was going on and what it was going to take to move forward?
I actually had a moment this morning because Bethany Grace is able to say 2 words, 3 words, and she's been talking about her upcoming birthday. She says 15, which is great. She can say 15. She's talking about her party, which is the end of January. And that actually, I had a trigger of sorrow and
Mm,
trauma this morning. I just kind of put that together that this time 15 years ago, I was in the hospital for 3 months.
mm,
And from the very beginning, we have kind of an extreme, but there are a lot of women who have high risk pregnancies and get pretty devastating news. It was actually almost 15 years ago to the day they were like, we have to do an amniocentesis, which,
mm,
we just had kind of not wanted to do, but they're like, we have to know what's going on because she quit growing and wasn't
mm,
thriving. And they came back. We sat in the geneticist's office 2 days before Christmas. She came in off her Christmas break to devastate us, basically.
mm,
As the doctor.
Yeah, the geneticist. Um, to let us know Bethany has a severe chromosomal deletion called 5p minus, where she's missing a chunk of genes on the fifth chromosome, the short arm. And she said to us, she's not going to survive to the birth. I mean, she was teeny tiny, not growing, intrauterine growth
mm,
restriction. If she does, she will be on a ventilator all her life. She'll never walk. She'll never talk. She will be profoundly intellectually disabled. She didn't say it that politically correctly, but um, we were devastated.
Yeah, Merry
But
Christmas.
2 days before Christmas.
yeah.
And so we had that image immediately of what the rest of our life would be like
Mm,
if she survived. And she's our miracle. She did. But we went home together and just sobbed.
mm,
And now we know that's called acute grief for parents who have children with special needs. And kind of had that image. I think I had it emotionally, and there goes my career forever. Todd had this image, I think, of how are we going to survive financially?
mm,
He was a youth pastor. Um, I think he had that image of I'm going to be working 80 hours the rest of my life, and there goes our marriage. And so yeah, there was that initial just devastation. That's a happy note. Here, you cheer it up.
Um, so, so yeah, we got the news, and like you said, we ended up in the hospital for she ended up there for a few months,
Three,
three
yeah.
months. So it was almost an hour away to the hospital, and was taking care of our son at the time who was 3.
Hmm.
mm,
So having to almost be a single dad there
Hmm.
for quite a while, and then um, the ended up emergency C-section. The birth happened. That was its own story, but you know, miracle, she survived, and my wife did too, luckily. And
Hmm.
but then it began just the time in the NICU. Then how long was she
Three
there?
months,
3 months more in the NICU.
hour
yeah.
away.
Kristin had to quit her job. She was up there, kind of like you're saying, daily. I'm spending every moment she can there. I'm still trying to work and take care of our son and keep things as normal as I can in the household. And just visiting Beth, and even one day she even coded, um,
Mm.
and just daily not knowing what's going to happen every day that we show up, and if she's going to make it another day, um, and all. So that's kind of what we were dealing with at the start there, and what they predicted for. And luckily, what we found out, and as you've witnessed yourself in your own story, is that oftentimes the doctors give you the worst case scenario.
Hmm.
Sometimes it comes to fruition,
Hmm.
but oftentimes it doesn't. So in our case, Beth, she loves life. She laughs, she runs and jumps as best as she can. She's not great at it, and she gets tired pretty quickly. But she is just she over years and years time, she's learned to eat on her own, and she still can't fully sustain herself. So she has like a G tube that we feed her through and do medicines through. And even this week, she's been very, very sick,
Very
almost
sick.
pneumonia, and have to do special care for her all week. But she just loves life, and she's
Hmm.
just profoundly changed our life
Yeah.
and how we see the world, and how we view things, and the joy we can find in little moments and little things. Um, just yesterday, it was, we said, "Oh, it's bath time," and she's, "Yes, woo!" and jumping up and down, and just, I mean, who do you see that gets excited about bath time? And
Right.
it just reminds us that what can we get excited about more often in a day? So that's been the struggle at the beginning for sure, and that terrible, terrible news, and working through it, and but 10 years later, seeing kind of the fruition, and things in a different light now.
Hmm.
Oh, that's so cool. Um, I think I see you guys when you guys talk about your daughter, to know that she goes through various challenges. She has various things that you guys have to do for her. But when you guys talk about her, I see you guys' face light up, and it's just awesome. I mean, there are a lot of parents out there, or moms that may be pregnant and get that kind of news, that
Mhm.
maybe want to abort the pregnancy, and you guys opted obviously to go the right direction and give birth to this child. We know, and I know you guys know, you being a youth pastor, Todd, I mean, we know that the Lord doesn't give us anything that we can't handle. And anything that we're struggling with, we can pray and look to Him to kind of help guide us through those challenges, right? Um, so you guys can understand that you having to quit your job and he's still trying to work and take care of your son. I mean, it makes sense you guys are going to have a little bit of a struggle, I mean, come
Mhm.
on. I mean, how else? I think, for my wife and I can't, I mean, it was a long time ago, but I'm sure there were times where we weren't communicating well and we were frustrated and we were scared. You guys were going through that. You guys were going through all these different emotions. So, in my opinion, and I'm not a licensed therapist, but in my opinion, duh, it makes sense that you guys went through that stuff.
Right.
The cool thing is you guys did recognize it. You guys did pull through for your daughter. She is thriving. You guys are thriving. And it's because you weren't willing to give up.
Hmm.
That's the key. You were not willing to give up. Not only give up, not only not willing to give up on your marriage, but not willing to give up on Bethany. You guys were not willing to give up. And I think that's where a lot of parents, maybe dads more than moms, but a lot of parents struggle with is
Hmm.
that giving up, that
Mhm.
I'm out. I can't handle this. And that's
Hmm.
where the separation occurs. I also think that separation or divorce happens because the husband and wife are essentially living different lives. I mean,
Hmm.
Kristin, you were living a different life than Todd. You were at the
Hmm.
hospital daily. Todd was working and taking care of you. So you guys were not together. I mean, you guys were living separate lives, essentially. And so I think that that can tend to happen too, where you guys just
Mhm.
kind of are not together anymore. So you kind of, I'm trying to articulate it the way I need to articulate it because I know what my mind's thinking. But because of the way you guys were living tends to cause you guys to go, you know, who are you, right? Kristin, who are
Mhm.
you? Todd, who are you? I haven't seen you. Like we don't see each other. We don't spend time together.
Mhm.
So you lose that love for each other, right? And I think that's the other side of where parents, get divorced because they're not only going through this struggle, but also losing each other. And that's something that you guys didn't do. So in
Mhm.
saying all that, I want to commend you guys both for um, not giving up, uh,
Mhm.
because that's the most important thing is that you did not give up. We teach
And the
our,
other big thing, oh,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was the other big thing in that, yeah, we didn't give up. That's very true. I think the other big piece for us, and what we keep finding with parents, is that oftentimes you're just going through life and not realizing what's going on.
Mhm.
And when you can name something, when you can figure out something, and then begin to work on it, that's when you can see change. So I would say most parents, definitely us in that situation, didn't even realize.
We were
Um,
survival
that we
mode.
were in that situation. And so it's coming to name it, to realize it, and to talk about it together is the only way forward. So that's one thing. Parents that find themselves in situations isolate themselves,
Mhm.
both from community and from their spouse. And it's really, and you don't want to be a burden to your spouse and put things on them. You're like, I'm just going to deal with it, or I'm not going to say anything today. They're dealing with enough already. We found that that is one of the biggest steps. Not even if you're having problems, if you may not even know you're having problems or have the outward manifestations of that, but it's when you start communicating and willing to say things out loud and talk through it, that's when you start figuring things out, and things come apparent between the two of you as you start talking, and one of you says one thing like, oh yeah, I'm seeing this, or I'm really struggling with this, like, oh, I didn't even know you were having a problem with that, tell me more, all of a sudden this dialogue starts, and that's really where healing and strength starts to build,
Mhm.
for couples and parents.
I would add to that, though, as you were talking, Bryan, there's a lot of shame
Mhm.
and there's a lot of stigma. We just want to normalize that, even if your child is, typically developing, there's a lot of stress on the marriage. There's a lot of stress on you and your mental health, and that's expected.
Mhm.
Seeking mental health treatment, which I avoided, there were a lot of reasons there. Um, there's nothing wrong with struggling
Mhm.
or seeking treatment. And for parents who have children with any additional need, we have double the risk for a mental health struggle. And we just want to normalize, we were in shame, we're struggling in our marriage, we're in ministry, what would the church think? As a mom, I thought something was wrong with me. And we just want to say it makes sense you're struggling and it's okay to go for help.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's okay. I mean, I don't know what parent hasn't thought at some point, um, maybe I shouldn't be a parent, or maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I don't want to be. And I think we have internal dialogue like that with
Hmm.
ourselves, and we're afraid to say it out loud.
Hmm.
And things like that, we were able to share with each other. We got to a point where we could, and just getting those out loud and exposing them,
Hmm.
allowed us to really work through a lot. And that was the core of building back some of our marriage, and what we find even now, just willing to share some of those things that we think are shameful, possibly. I think every parent struggles with that, not just
Hmm.
ones with special needs,
Especially
but
moms. Well,
mhm,
dads too, in a
yeah.
different way, but.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. And like I said, yeah, of course you guys are going to go through certain stresses, right, of the marriage. I mean, as you alluded to, Kristen, we parents, husband and wife, can have normal stresses even with
Mhm.
a family that doesn't have those kind of challenges that you guys have, right? So there's normal stresses that we deal with every day. The crazy thing is that you guys mentioned it, that survival mode. It's
Mhm.
amazing what you can do when you're put in that spot where you have to do,
Hmm.
right? And because you guys didn't give up, you knew, okay, we're not giving up, so we have to do this. This is the way it has to be, and we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure this out together. Um, Another example for me, we went through kind of similar survival mode. Like not only when my son was born, but my younger son, he was 2.5 weeks premature, but he was like almost 10 pounds. He was a big boy. But it wasn't him that was struggling. It was my wife. She ended up hemorrhaging after the birth. And I got shoved out of the room,
Hmm.
out of her recovery room. I got shoved out of the room, and like a rush of doctors came running in. And then the next thing I know, they're wheeling her out on her bed with her main doctor was literally straddling her on top of the bed, and he's hooking her up doing all kinds of different things while other doctors and nurses were pushing the bed
Mm-hmm.
away, and off they went, and I had no clue what was. I was like, what is going on? I had no clue. So a nurse had escorted me back to my wife's main room, and I sat there in the dark like I have no idea what's going on. Her
Yeah.
family was there, and we were just kind of lost. And then her doctor, the one that was on top of her bed, kind of hooking her up, he came to me a while later. She was rushed to the ICU. He said, Bryan, we were this close. We were this close from losing her. And she had lost enough blood for two people. And they had to put her in a medically induced coma. You know, she was in a medically induced coma, like they had to knock her out, keep her out. Um, she's a type 1 diabetic, so she had to have her diabetic doctor there to make sure everything was still functioning the way it was supposed to function, right? But she was like that for 2 weeks. Now here I am, a new dad again for the second time. I now have a 2-year old, right, at home
Hmm.
that now I'm having to care for him, but I'm also have a newborn that's in, you know, he's completely healthy, but now I have a wife. So now I'm dealing with three things at once,
Mm. Yeah.
where I had all kinds of support with from her family helping me out. Like they were taking care of Blake and stuff while I was able to be at the hospital. But I had to keep my son, my second son, Brett, he was still at the hospital. He stayed in the care unit where they keep, all the babies. So he was in there. So I was having to go back and forth between visiting him and staying with my wife. And that was like 4 or 5 days. And the hospital came to me and said, Bryan, we can't keep Brett anymore.
Hmm.
He has to go home. And they tried to bring in social services to find out if I had enough care to take care of both my boys. And I was like, I'm good. You guys ain't got to worry about me.
Hmm.
I'm fine. Because I knew I was going to figure it out, whatever it was, and I had support to do
Hmm.
it. Um, but so everything was fine. Everything ended up working out. So that's part of my journey, right? I was having to figure it out. I was in survival mode. I was not going to leave my wife. I was going to be there by her side to help her through whatever she needed to get through. But I was also going to make sure that Brett was taken care of and Blake was taken care of. And I was going to do whatever I had to do to spend enough time with them as well. One thing that I didn't do that's super important that I want to touch on is I wasn't worried about self-care. I wasn't taking care of myself. And I had people telling me to, I had people like my father-in-law, he was saying, Bryan, you need to do something for yourself right now. You need to go do whether it's go for I like to run, whether it's go for a run or
Hmm.
Hmm.
you need to go meditate, you need to go take a drive somewhere. You need to go take care of yourself because and I've learned that over the years. Um, if your cup isn't 100% full, then how do you expect to take care of others in a way
Hmm.
that is appropriate, right? So you
Hmm.
have to make sure that your cup is full, and I mean through self-care. So parents that are out
Hmm.
there, I know I've talked about it before on my show with other people, but self-care is so important, whether it's exercising, meditating, praying, all
Hmm.
these different things that you could do, reading, going for drives, anything like that is important, but the self-care is so important. You guys were in survival mode. You guys were in this power struggle, not power struggle, but you guys were in this struggle with each other, dealing with stresses, right? And now
Mhm.
you're dealing with the challenges of your daughter and how's that going to work out? And what does our life look like going forward? And here you guys are not taking care of yourselves.
Mhm.
So, and you guys address that in the book, but I want you guys to talk about it a little bit for my audience. Like, what would you say to parents that are going through similar situation as you guys as far as self-care and how important that is?
Mhm. I think we found every skill that we put in the book, including this one, is you have to start with one tiny thing. Find some success at that one little thing and then expand it. So, in terms of self-care, it's easy to think, I don't have time for self-care. I don't have
Hmm.
time to think about myself. I've got to take care of my kids, or I got situations, whatever it is that you find yourself in. And think you don't have time for it. So it really takes carving out and saying, okay, I'm going to take 1 minute. That's at the very base level. A few years ago, for me, literally fixing my coffee in the morning, um, I would take 1 minute to slow down. I would pour my creamer in slowly and just gently stir and just watch it mix together. And that was 1 minute of my day, but I cannot tell you how much that just changed my attitude, my
Hmm.
mood, um, and just helped me to face the day better. And then from there, I was able to build up and find more time to do other things, up to 5 minutes to do something, sometimes, or we talk about getting away, sneaking to your closet to have a candy bar. Maybe that's what you need is that 5 minutes away
To
sometimes.
mindfully eat that candy
Hmm.
bar.
And then we started um, giving each other gifts of time and saying, you go do this. Kristen would come to me and say, look, I've got dinner. You go take 20 minutes and go for a run. That's my gift to you. You can't stay here. Go. And
You're grumpy. Not just when you're grumpy, but when he starts to get grumpy, I'm like, you need to go run.
and I try to do the same thing for her. And it becomes this, almost this, can you outdo each other and
Hmm.
allowing each other to have that time because you start to see the results. When you start something little and you feel the positive impact it has in your life, you want more. And you keep growing and find ways to do it. And you find overall, you start getting healthier and you find good things happen in your life, your more positive attitude, better connection with each other as a couple, better parenting.
Hmm.
Even though you're spending less time parenting, it's more effective and you're a better parent the rest of the time because you're caring for yourself. So that's what I think is our biggest thing is start small
Hmm.
and keep finding ways to grow and to add things into your life that allow you to have that self-care from lots of different angles. It can be exercise, it can be meditation, it can be doing something you just enjoy, reading, something like that, and find creative ways to do it sometimes. I got into books on audio,
Mhm.
and really that was my way to get away. I stopped listening to the sports talk on the radio and just listened to books, and that encouraged me and gave me something that radio didn't. And so you find ways like that across all aspects of your life to build in self-care.
And I'd like to say it a different way, kind of saying the same thing, but a different way.
Mhm.
I think special needs parents, especially, but all parents in general, they hear the term self-care and they think, oh, I don't have time for an hour. I don't have time, to get away and go to the spa. And I think
Mhm.
this concept of self-care, we need to start thinking micro moments that even just 5 minutes of mindful breathing, um,
Mhm.
that makes a tremendous difference in stress levels and mental health and even physical health.
Mhm.
Mindful parenting greatly improves not only the marriage and the child's development, and even behaviors of just being fully present and in the present moment. So self-care doesn't have to be this big thing. Yes, we need to go to the doctor. We need to take care of our health. That definitely needs to happen, which a lot of times gets put at the bottom of the list.
Mhm.
Um, I've just started telling, my message now speaking to all parents. I'm starting to speak to parents in general now. You're never going to do everything that you could do for your child. We're never going to be able to take Bethany Grace to as many therapies as I could possibly take her to, or do speech therapy at home. I can always do more.
Hmm.
We're never going to get through that list. So that's why we have to bump up. I'm going to take 10 minutes for myself today before I go through that list of phone calls I have to make. I'm going to go to that doctor's appointment. We have to bump up taking care of our own health to the top of the list.
Hmm.
And that does greatly help the health of our children, our marriage, and our family. But look, we need to start thinking not smaller, because it actually makes a bigger impact, but shorter amounts of time and simpler ways to care for ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, parents, a lot of people say, I don't have time. I don't have time. There's time in the day. There's certain things that
Hmm.
you're doing that you don't need to do, that you could kind of steal a little bit of that time away so you can make time for your self-care. Early in the morning, that's when I do my exercising, things like that I do. I'm an avid runner, so I go running in the morning and I do it at, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm out running. And that's my time. That is my time that no one takes away from me. I have my music going. It allows my mind to just clear. Those kind of things go on for me to help me, function the way I need to function throughout the day. Another example is I just recently in the last year got into, I've never done this before, never played with them before, never touched them before. The last year I got into Legos. Don't ask me, like this is one right here, is right behind me. I don't ask me why, but I just started like playing with Legos, and the next thing I know, I've got model Legos everywhere. Like I
Hmm.
have boxes of Legos that I haven't even put together yet. My wife's kind of over it, but uh, that's my time. And what people might think it's silly. Yeah, here I am. I'm a 50, almost 52-year-old man, and I'm playing with Legos. Well, the reason I do that is it's actually relaxing to me and it
Hmm.
actually helps me to focus. So when
Hmm.
I have anxiety and stresses and things, challenging things that I'm dealing with, I'll tell my wife, like I come home, like, I can't deal with this. I'm stressed out. She's like, what's going on? And she'll ask and we'll talk about it for a minute. And she'll
Hmm.
go, what do you need to do? That's what she'll ask me. She'll go, what do you need to do? And I said, I just need to sit down and play with Legos for a bit. That's all. I need
Hmm.
about a half an hour to just play with Legos. And I'll literally sit at the dining room table and she'll leave me alone. And I'm focused on my Legos.
Hmm.
It's bizarre, right? It's bizarre, but it's enjoyable to me and
Hmm.
it's my self-care and it allows me to get refocused so that way I can
Hmm.
be who I need to be for my family. So yes, that self-care, I don't care if it's like you guys said, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, take that time. You can get up 10 minutes earlier in the morning to just sit and just relax and meditate. The breathing is, you're absolutely right, Kristen. Absolutely nailed it with the breathing. You can go on apps. There's apps
Hmm.
like Calm and Headspace. There's apps out there. There's YouTube that teach you how to
Hmm.
do breathing techniques. And there's various breathing techniques that you can go through. That really they really do. You may not think it. You're like, how's this breathing technique going to help me? Trust me, you go through it and do it, and you start to implement it every day in your life. It only takes a minute or two. You do it every day
Hmm.
in your life. Trust me, it helps you to feel better. So self-care is one of the most important things you can do as a parent, as an individual, before you do anything else. Self-care is
Hmm.
important.
Hmm.
So I'm glad we were able to touch on that. I want to ask you one last thing before I let you guys go because we've gone a little long. But um, for parents out there that maybe they're getting ready to go through this challenge, maybe they know that they're gonna give birth to a child that maybe will have some challenges growing up. Um, Maybe they're just in the midst of it right now and they're struggling together. What I mean, give me something a piece of advice that you could share with them to kind of help motivate them to get through these stresses or challenges?
I would say definitely lean on support, seek more support. That is a huge factor in being resilient and coping and processing grief. And just allow yourself to feel your emotions.
Mm,
It makes sense you're feeling this way. Allow yourself to feel that and grieve as you go. And just be willing to lean on others and process with others and find that support.
Yeah, there's so many resources out there. I think that's one thing we didn't know.
Hmm.
We came home from the NICU and didn't know there were resources, and we were trying to care for our daughter 24 hours a day. Then somebody was like, have you applied for Social Security? Something simple that we should have known, but like, no, we haven't. And so we're able to apply. We're able to get 24-hour nursing care. That helped tremendously. We still had a lot of responsibilities and doing things with her. It didn't take away all those, but that's where like our website comes in. We have lots of stuff up there for those couples to find resources. There's so many good
Hmm.
organizations out there. There's so many parents that are going through this
mm,
as well that we're not out at school, we're not in the public eye because we're taking care of our kids. But there's other parents out there, and you can find them to be that community, like she was talking about. So that's one of the biggest things. And I think just knowing that this is a season,
mm,
um, and to have hope. Hope does amazing things for your health, for your marriage, for your outlook on life. Um, Things are not always going to be this way, and that you can change them and impact the future that you have. And if you have that hope, even a tiny bit, to look and do that, you can accomplish more than you can ever imagine.
mm. Yeah, well said. Thank you guys for sharing that. Yeah, you guys do touch about talking about support because you guys touch about on that in the book as well. Dealing with something on your own like that is a challenge, and always seeking support, like you know um, whether it's your pastor, a relative, or even there are plenty of support groups out there, right?
Hmm.
I mean, there's a mess of different support groups, right, that you can go to. And even if it's just a vent, you're not necessarily looking for information. Maybe you just need to vent, and you can't,
Hmm.
Mhm.
you guys as husband and wife, you struggle with venting to each other because you guys are dealing with the same situation. Maybe it's just a vent and you just need somebody's ear to vent to and let them just
Mhm.
listen. Um, Support is one of those self-cares. It really is one of
Hmm.
those self-cares that you really need to do. So I think that's great advice. Thank you guys very much for sharing that. If my listeners, viewers want to look you up, learn a little bit more about you, maybe get the book, where's the best places for them to do that?
Yes, our website is disabilityparenting.com, and our goal is just to provide as many free resources as possible. So we've created a lot of professional free downloadables, worksheets, tips, and also the book is available pretty much anywhere books and ebooks are sold. So Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, Baker Books, and follow us at Disability Parenting on Instagram. And we just love to hear from parents who have questions or they're like, I can't find a resource on this. Just send us a message. We would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that my team puts those links in the show notes. But Todd and Kristin, you guys are a blessing. You guys were given two gifts, but your gift of your daughter was a major gift that was given to you, and you guys acknowledge that gift and cherish that gift. And I'm excited to see what the future holds, not only for her, but for you guys as well. So thank you guys very much for joining me on the show. I'm looking forward to continuing our friendship. But thank you guys very much for joining me today.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you, Bryan.
Brian.
Yeah. Listen, guys, this has been another episode of Dad Up with my good friends, Todd and Kristin Evans. And if you guys are looking for resources that maybe you don't have kids, a child that has disabilities, maybe you're just struggling in your marriage. Those kinds of things can be found through their links. You can go to their website, like they said, or you can go and pick up their book. I highly recommend it. Taking care of yourself, taking care of each other, living together as husband and wife, figuring out those challenges that we deal with every day, regardless of the struggles our kids may be facing, but even dealing with a child that struggles with certain disabilities, you need to figure out a way to handle it. And one of the first things you can do is go to their website. They are very responsive on Instagram. If you send them a question or you just want to share something, maybe your story with them, you can do that through the DM on Instagram. If you send them a weird message or weird question, they probably won't answer. But if you send them a legitimate question or something, they'll respond to you. Trust me, they're really good about that. Make sure you guys are following them on Instagram as well. And as always, if you are not yet subscribed to my show, please make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the guests that I have on each and every week. And I look forward to seeing you guys all on the next episode of Dad Up. Wow, another amazing episode in the books. So much was shared, and I'm truly grateful my guest was able to pour into you to help you elevate your dad game and really dad up. Make sure you bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're here, please don't forget to leave me a rating and a review. I always appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, don't forget, your role as a dad is one of the most important roles you have. So if you need a little help or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at daduptribe.com or at my Instagram page at Dad Up Podcast. Until next time, everyone, Dad Up.